Hello everyone, it's time for another episode of Shooting Answers. Welcome back, my friends, to a new episode of Shooting Answers. Alright, I will just go straight to the first question of the day. Let's see. Alright, Jasmine. Jasmine says, how far in advance do you plan a trip? It's tough to give you a straight answer, Jasmine, on this one because it depends. I let's say that I really like to plan everything because I learned from my mistakes that if you really want to get a good picture, you gotta plan it. It's not just gonna happen. So I like to organize every single thing, even the restaurant at night in that specific location if I can. Sometimes it just happens that the magazine calls you a couple of days before, like, hey, are you still available to go there or here? Sure. And but at that point, the magazine knows everything, knows that I'm going to meet the special tour guide in that specific location. I will fly to the location, so I'm kind of ready. I just got to bring my equipment, my cameras, my lenses, my outfits, depending of the season, depending of the place, cold or warm outfits, but everything is kind of planned. When I plan my own trips, I like to be very, very well organized. Well, let's say that if I wanna photograph the leaves colors in Vermont, New England, or Portland, well, I cannot go in June. So I need to be prepared. But at the same time, I don't know exactly today when between September, October, and beginning of November, the leaf will change colors. So even if I know what I want, even if I can plan as much as possible priorly, I can actually book a flight until I know for sure this is the right week, the peak of the orange to red colors, it's happening now. So I know the location where I want to go. I decided previously what I'm going to bring, where I want to go, but I can't book an hotel, I cannot book a rental car, I cannot book a flight until I'm sure that the leaves are actually really changing colors. And every year is different. So I have a plan that is going to happen probably between end of October and beginning of November, but I don't know exactly when. So, Jasmine, how far in advance do I plan my trip? I try to be organized. I try to be ready. I try to plan it, but sometimes I can't. Did I answer your question? I think so, right? So should I move forward to the next one? All right, let's do it. Anita, whoa, is it easy to become a photographer? Anita, do I actually have an answer for that? Well, let me try to give you my personal answer. Yes and no. Is it easier than 25, 30 years ago? For sure. Today we are in the digital era. Digital era means you click, you look at the picture, you don't like it, you delete it, you take another one. Making mistakes will help you to get it right at some point. Back then, analogic. You needed to understand what kind of light you had, put the right film in the camera, and you wouldn't see the results until you not just finished your film, but only after you develop your film. So my dad was a Formula One races photographer, right? And he's in Australia for the Grand Prix. He's taking 30, 40, 50 films of pictures, 24 or 36 clicks per film. And then he's coming back home. Back then, I was living in Italy. So, Italy, Bologna, to Adelaide or Sydney or Adelaide and Melbourne, where they had the Grand Prix, it was like 25, 26 hours of flight. Not actually a straight flight, so you had a stopover, probably Singapore or Hong Kong, it doesn't matter. So you fly back, it's already Monday, so the day after the Grand Prix, you develop 30, 40, 50 films. Oh my God, they are all dark. Well, then what do? The race is gone, it's done. You are already back home. So you needed to know exactly what you were doing. Today, even if you don't know what you're doing, at some point you might make it happen. You might get a picture that you like. Now, the question answering your, is it easy to become a photographer? I will say at this point, no, because yeah, you got the picture right. Do you know why? Do you know how? Do you know what you did? Do you know the reason why if you move the settings from to, now your picture looks brighter and looks better? That's where I think we gotta figure out where is the line between I know what I'm doing and I have the money to buy a good camera. Let me click here and there, and whatever I take, it's fine. Or let me just change some settings, hoping that I'm gonna get it right. So it is easy to become a photographer if you really want to study, if you really want to understand the difference between this lens and that lens, if you want to understand how hard can be, how easy can be, how the settings work, at that point I will say yes. You are willing to make a commitment studying? Yes, it's easier at that point to become a photographer. Now, another, Anita, it's a very complicated question. What kind of photographer? Because wildlife, landscape photographer, wedding photographer, food photographer, real estate photographer, portrait photographer. Those are completely different fields that you need to study differently. You need to learn differently. You need different equipment. You need different lenses. You need, well, if you are a landscape photographer, you got to travel. If you're a portrait photographer, you don't need to travel so much. If you are a portrait photographer, you can take the picture, and if you don't like it, you can take another one. You can ask your subject to smile again. You can wait for an hour while it's raining and take the same pictures an hour later. If you're a wildlife photographer or a wedding photographer, but let's say wildlife photographer, you can't. The lion is crossing by now. You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta know what you have in your hand. You gotta know how far you can go with your camera setting and lens wise. Is it harder to become a wildlife photographer than a portrait photographer? No. You still need to know what you're doing. What I'm saying is you might gotta practice more. You might gotta make more mistakes doing this one instead of the other one. Wedding photographer. If you don't know your settings, if you don't know how far ISO wise you can go with your camera, the risk that you take the most important moment of the bride and the groom and the picture is dark. Can happen. It probably happened to somebody. And back then it was like taking the pictures without the film in. It happened. Actually, my uncle photographed my cousin, his daughter, first communion, and he realized the day after when he tried to take the film out of the camera and going to develop it, that there was no film. So he messed up. So it is hard, but it's also easier than before. Before, you needed to know everything about your camera. You needed to know everything about that light. You needed to study. You needed to make a huge commitment. Today, fortunately and unfortunately, YouTube can help you. Making mistakes on your own without to study anything can help you at some point, because you are going to make it right, or you are going to make it better than the click before. But again, the important thing is to understand why. Why now the picture is brighter than before? Why now my picture looks better to me than before? What did I do? Oh, I changed here and there, but do you know why you did change here and there? Are you able in the same situation tomorrow to do it right at first before to make the same mistake that you just made today? Well, Anita, it's easier than 30 years ago, for sure. I still consider photography a job and not just a hobby. I still consider my profession, my job, a very high skilled job. And in order to get those skills, you gotta be patient. You gotta make commitments, which are, I need to spend time on the field. I need to spend time out of my family. I need to spend time there. And maybe there it's raining, which means I need to spend time wet, soaking wet for one picture. Do I really want that or not? That's the first commitment. Second commitment, money. It's a very expensive hobby and job. Why? Because I actually answer kind of the same. I brought the same conversation in a different question than I answer in a different episode. You can be a person that can afford to buy a very expensive camera, but you don't know what you're doing. Maybe I do know what I'm doing. I do know what I want to accomplish, but I don't have the money to buy the camera that can help me to accomplish my goal. I might don't have the lens because my lens is not bright enough, and I don't have the money to afford another one. And so you need commitments. You need to make commitments. You need at some point to learn how to become a photographer. You just don't become a photographer from night to day or day to night just because you purchase a camera. Anita, did I answer your question? Is it easy to become a photographer? Yes and no. I still believe that you gotta study a lot, you gotta work a lot, you gotta make a lot of mistakes, you gotta improve, keep improving not just your skills but your equipment as well, and then it will be easier to become a photographer. All right, this is it for the day. Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Anita, for your questions. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I try to answer all your questions in different videos. Follow not just my journeys and my adventure, but follow my social media where you can see pretty much live where I'm heading to, what is my new adventure or what I just did. Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, what else? Instagram, and YouTube, of course. And just follow me. For today, it's all. Thank you. Thank you all. And I'll see you to a new episode of Shooting Answers.